Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for the third annual Alliance for New York's Farmland Farmer Appreciation Breakfast. My name is Samantha Levy. I'm New York Policy Manager for American Farmland Trust. And Michaela, you may be on mute.
That's gonna happen too many times. My name is Michaela Rees-Brown, and I'm the New York Policy Consultant.
And we will be your hosts throughout today's program. I really wish I could be with all of you in the concourse right now, but this year is obviously different. So before we move forward, some housekeeping for our virtual space together. Please take a moment to, in your video box, locate the 3 dots in the top right corner and rename yourself if your name is not popping up underneath your picture. And please mute yourself as well. So throughout this program, we ask you to use the thumbs up or the clap reactions or the chat to communicate with us and with each other. You can also ask questions in the chat as we go through our program, and we'll address them as we can. Your video use is up to you, so you can have your video on or off, and you can also control the view of the screen, so you can toggle between gallery or speaker view if you want to see everybody here or if you just want to see the person speaking. And just so everybody knows, we are recording this program. So first, allow me to introduce Commissioner Richard Ball, who was gracious enough to join us this morning to kick us off and talk about farmland protection and our next generation of farmers. As many of you know, the commissioner is a farmer himself and a great champion for our farmers in New York. And under the governor and the commissioner's leadership, they have made record funding available to protect farmland, especially for our dairy farmers. Let's give him a warm virtual welcome this morning, Commissioner.
Well, thank you so much, Samantha, and I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate it. Another tradition being preserved is it's been a number of years now that I've been able to be with you folks on this particular day. So thank you to our hosts and our partners, American Farmland Trust. Appreciate your work and partnership. Help us make sure that our farms remain protected from development pressures, preserved for the next generation, and that our farmers, both existing ones and new ones, have access to the land they need to continue to feed our communities. You have a very good agenda before you today, and I thank you again for just letting me be a small part of it. I have to say I'm pretty proud of the efforts that the department and the governor's leadership here over the last many years have helped further our farmland protection program, frankly, take it to some new levels, particularly in the most recent years. We've seen some pretty incredible accomplishments, particularly as the program has been used as a tool to help some agricultural communities that were facing pretty extreme difficulties. Through our Dairy Transitions program, we've been able to help dairy farms diversify or transition their farms to the next generation and keep that land in agriculture. In that program so far in the second round, more than $9 million has been awarded to 10 awards, protecting nearly 5,000 acres of important farmland. And that's in addition to the first round of $30 million that we invested in the program, which protected approximately 15,000 acres of farmland all across the state. And then the Farm Operations in Transition program was launched to help our non-dairy operations that were also struggling with recent increased economic pressures, thinking about trade to climate change. And I think approximately $2 million has been awarded so far through that program. This year, we've got a very strong executive budget for agriculture that I think once again demonstrates a commitment to agriculture, from local assistance dollars to environmental protections. The governor's executive budget sets forth continued significant funding for agriculture, including funding for the next round of Farmland Protection program. If there is a silver lining to this COVID-19 pandemic that we're enduring right now, it's that New Yorkers and New York farmers have come to appreciate New York's food supply chain. I'm pretty optimistic that in the days and weeks ahead, as we begin to recover from COVID-19, that has interrupted our lives just so dramatically, that we're going to continue to advance our farmland protection programs, get back on the path, the successful one that we built. And that's where you come in. All our great work has really been possible through cooperation, through the great partnerships with each and every one of you. We all have a responsibility to maintain the integrity of our natural resources, to preserve our land, and to protect our food supply for the next generation. So the work never seems to get done, and we've got more challenges ahead, but things just seem to work better when we work together. And I believe that our future in New York agriculture is pretty bright. So thanks again. Keep your pencils up today, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Very inspiring words to kick us off this morning, so really appreciate that. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the Alliance for New York's Farmland is a coalition of farmers, land trusts, and farm and environmental organizations advocating for programs and policies in Albany that protect farmland and bring a diverse new generation of farmers onto the land.
Throughout this breakfast, we'll be playing a little trivia game to help keep things lively this morning. So take a moment now to open a sticky note on your computer or get out a sheet of paper. Number it 1 to 13, leave a little extra space around number 5. It's 1 point for each correct answer. Keep track of your points, and we'll ask you to tally and post your score in the chat at the end. Winner gets ultimate bragging rights for knowing the most about New York's farmland and farmers.
Today, we're going to be talking about programs funded by the state budget that keep land and farming and keep farmers on the land, and why they matter right now. As the commissioner mentioned, the pandemic, of course, we also saw how our highly efficient global food systems resulted in empty grocery shelves. It has never been more important to our state economy or our future food security to keep land and farming in our own backyard while building stronger, more resilient local supply chains.
Since this is the breakfast for the Alliance for New York's Farmland, we'll kick off our trivia with 2 questions about farmland in New York. So first, how many acres of farmland do you think New York has? And second, what percentage of those acres are considered nationally significant, which we're defining here as our best land for growing food and crops over time with minimal environmental impact? So here we have a map from American Farmland Trust 2020 Farms Under Threat Report, showing where over 9 million acres of farmland are located throughout the state. 54% of New York's farmland is considered nationally significant, again, meaning our best land for growing food. And that's the farmland that you see in that darker green color. We see this farmland concentrated in counties bordering the Great Lakes and along the I-90 corridor. We also see some great farmland up in parts of the North Country and down in Suffolk County. These counties have the highest percentages of farmland that is considered nationally significant in the state. So these 9 million acres are the foundation of our thriving farm and food economy in New York. For questions 3 and 4, please put down, what is the total statewide economic impact of New York's agricultural sector, and how many jobs are supported by the agricultural sector in New York? So, drum roll, the farm sector generates $47 billion annually in statewide economic impact, and it supports over 160,000 jobs.
But that's not all. This land is also the foundation from which farmers grow the food and crops that sustain us all. Now for number 5, we will give you a moment to list as many of the top 10 New York State agricultural products as you can. You get a bonus point if you get 5 or more correct. We'll be very impressed if you get all 10 and absolutely amazed if they are in order. And a hint, don't look at the photo for any clues. Turnips are not in the top 10 in New York. So we'll give you all a moment to write down what you think are the top 10 agricultural products in New York State according to the 2017 census. Okay. All right. Here are your answers. So here are the top 10, more than half of which you'll notice are food that people eat. This is not true of all states. So in New York, we're really lucky. And then for a bonus, we also wanted to share that New York is a major national agricultural producer in the top 5 for 15 products listed here. half of which are related to dairy production. Now, this map that AFT created this year depicts where we grow these crops on farmland throughout the state. It shows the predominant crops or farm products organized by Regional Economic Development Council region based on sales data from the 2017 census. So there's a lot to take in here in this map. So please take a moment to look at it, concentrate on your region or look at the whole state, and feel free to write some observations in the chat about what you see in your region while we go through what we noticed. First, in New York, we grow the full plate on all kinds and sizes of farms, and each region has at least one main commodity that contributes significantly to the state's total sales, which are represented in the larger icons in the map. For example, dairy in the North Country or in Central New York, or fruit and vegetables in the Hudson Valley or in the Finger Lakes. And the smaller icons also show where a region or county still contributes significantly to the state's farm economy. Next, the Finger Lakes is an agricultural powerhouse. We could have put every icon in here. And you may remember farmers in the region are fortunate to be growing these crops on some of the best land found both in New York State and throughout the country. Third, we raise dairy cows nearly everywhere in New York. Dairy is our biggest agricultural industry in New York State. And fourth, we grow a lot of food that people eat, especially near our urban areas. And speaking of which, this map that we created from 2017 census data shows the counties where farmers sell the most locally or to institutional markets like hospitals or schools, with the darker colors representing higher sales numbers. At a glance, we can see that in Western New York, in the Finger Lakes, in the Hudson Valley, and on Long Island, and even in the Southern Tier, farmers are growing and selling food directly to feed New Yorkers. Now, if you think back to the last map, a lot of the sales in these darker counties are from fresh fruit and vegetables. You can see that these farms that sell locally contribute to food security, particularly in dense urban areas. But this is also where our land is most threatened. Let's get back to our trivia game. For question number 6, according to AFT's Farms Under Threat report, how much farmland did we lose or fragment between 2001 and 2016? And for question 7, what percentage of that land that we lost was nationally significant farmland? Give you just a moment to write it down. All right, so on this map, you can now see in red where we have lost or fragmented over 250,000 acres of farmland just between 2001 and 2016. Over half of this conversion was nationally significant land, our best land for growing food, and given average farm sales per acre, that's over $200 million in lost farm revenue due to the loss of this land within just 15 years. I'll also point out on this map that most of the conversion, as you can see, was around our urban areas. And remember, this is also where we grow the most food for people and sell the most locally. Now, the highest conversion of acres during this time frame was in Broome, Clinton, Dutchess, Erie, Genesee, and Madison counties, 3 of which have the highest percentages of nationally significant farmland in the state. And again, that's our best land that is most under threat. Now, historically, development has caused this conversion of our farmland, but new pressures, such as from our farmers aging, which we will talk more about today, from solar development to meet the state's climate goals, and from people leaving New York's cities due to the pandemic, could all accelerate farmland loss in the coming years without our intervention, with implications for our food security.
So what do we do to stem the tide of further farmland loss? The State Farmland Protection Program is a key part of the solution to address these pressures on our farmland. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with it, what is farmland protection and how does it work? Essentially, landowners first decide that they want to protect their land. This is an entirely voluntary process. And then those that are interested in protecting their farmland work with their local land trust or local government to apply for funding. If they're successful, these public dollars are used to buy the right to develop the land. So the landowner still owns their land, the farm remains a working farm, but no landowner, present or future, can ever develop the property. The land is permanently protected for agricultural use, whether inherited or sold. The state of New York invests to protect farmland through the Environmental Protection Fund to keep land available and affordable for farmers for generations to come. This program was established in New York back in 1996. For question 8, how many acres of farmland have been protected in New York State since then? So far, over 76,000 acres have been protected, which is an achievement that we are here to celebrate today. Looking at this map, we see protected farmland across the state in this dark green color. Note that this data layer is still being built, so it currently shows most, but not all of our protected farmland in New York State. We see a concentration of protected farmland in the Hudson Valley and then sprinkled across the state with clusters near Rochester, Ithaca, and Syracuse. Huge credit is owed to the farmers, the land trusts, and local governments that are working in these regions and statewide to protect our valuable farmland. Likewise, we must recognize the strong commitment of the governor and the legislature and the Department of Agriculture and Markets for making this funding available to do this work. However, all of this still only comprises 1.1% of New York's total farmland. We have a lot more work to do to ensure that we keep enough land and farming to continue supporting the foundation of our food and farm economy. Before we move on, I want to briefly look at Suffolk County, which was the site of the first purchase of development rights in the country back in 1974. Suffolk County has protected almost 2/3 of their agricultural land because of rising land prices and intense development pressure. But even here, with their fantastic track record, there is still work to be done to ensure that we don't lose more of this nationally significant farmland that generates high volumes of local food sales and makes significant economic contributions to New York's agricultural sector. The main reason to protect farmland is, of course, to keep land and farming, but there are a lot of other benefits too that have been detailed in a robust body of research. First and foremost, farmland protection enables farmers who protect their land to invest in and expand their farm operations or pass them on to the next generation, which we'll talk about more later. Protected farmland also helps signal to farm neighbors that farming in that community is more stable, continues to be a viable enterprise. Within communities, farmland protection helps support jobs. It provides local economic stimulus, has been shown to increase nearby property values, therefore property tax revenues. It also lowers the cost of community services that local governments have to provide. Finally, farmland protection meshes with the state's environmental and climate goals. When coupled with smart growth planning, farmland protection can help reduce transportation emissions, which is a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions in New York State. Just as importantly, protected farmland delivers important cost-saving, long-term environmental services, like flood mitigation and carbon sequestration, which is particularly critical to meeting our climate goals in New York.
Now, as we mentioned before, protecting one's farmland is voluntary, but the good news is we are ready to protect more farmland in New York. In recent years, 250 farmers have expressed interest in protecting their land to their local land trust, representing a near-term opportunity to protect over 51,000 more acres. But we can't do it alone and can't do it without public dollars to support this. This year, we are grateful to the governor for proposing strong funding for farmland protection and holding the EPF at $300 million. Because of the immediate demand and urgent need, we are urging the governor and the legislature to work together to maintain last year's level of funding for this program, which was $18 million, as part of a $300 million EPF. But farmland protection isn't just, all these things that we talked about or a funding line in the budget. It's public dollars that can really change people's lives. So at this point, I'd like to invite Lorna Wright from Genesee Land Trust to come off mute to introduce our first farmer speaker today.
Thank you, Samantha. I am very excited to introduce Marilyn DeMeyer of DeMeyer Family Farms. Marilyn farms one of those highlighted dark green areas just west of Rochester in Monroe County. And she has been a leader in Monroe County agriculture for decades. She's been working to ensure that farming and agriculture remain a vibrant part of both the town she lives in as well as Monroe County. She serves on the Monroe County Agricultural and Farmland Protection Board and has served on Parma's Farmland and Open Space Committee, ensuring that Parma adopted a farmland protection plan. And this year, she took the rather selfish opportunity to apply for farmland protection funding through the Transitions Grant Program, which we hope will be funded soon and that we'll hear about that soon. So I will turn it over to Marilyn now to tell us more.
Good morning. I'm so grateful to be here. And thank you to Lorna from the Genesee Land Trust and the American Farmland Trust for inviting me to speak today. So together with my son, Rich, we run Meyer Family Farms in the town of Parma. We grow corn, soybeans, wheat, hay, kidney beans, and winter squash on about 300 acres. 100 acres of that is what we own, and the rest we rent from neighbors. So we have a great mix of people here this morning, and Samantha, Michaela, and Commissioner Ball have given a really nice overview of farm preservation. So I'll focus on what farm protection means to me and my farm and why the continued funding is just crucial for the future of agriculture in New York State. Excuse me. A quick bit of my own history. I got directly involved with farming when I met Gene Meyer as an employee on his vegetable and grain farm. He found out I could drive a stick shift, and the next thing I knew, I was driving the tractors, working 60 plus hours a week, and then he asked me to marry him, and so here I am today. My knowledge of farm preservation comes from several places, and as Lorna mentioned, I was on the Town of Parma Farmland Preservation Committee for years, went to a lot of American Farmland Trust training sessions, and I'm on the Monroe County Agriculture and Farmland Protection Board, also serve as Vice President of Monroe County Farm Bureau. So I have quite a background in farming, and I want to see these programs successful. So Meyer Family Farms began in 1921 when Gene's parents, who were immigrants from Belgium, bought a farm in the town of Greece. The Hilton farm was later purchased, and as often happens, that original farm was sold for development to settle the parents' estate with 4 elder sisters. And Gene simply could not afford to purchase his sister's shares in order to continue farming the land, since a developer was able to pay much more per acre. And now that beautiful, fertile farmland is a strip mall and townhouses. When my husband unfortunately passed in 2012, my children, Rich and Elizabeth, were committed to helping me keep the farm going. Elizabeth is now in Missouri earning her PhD in plant science, and I'm proud that both of my children inherited a love of farming, and I'm really honored that my son and I are now business partners. Besides being passionate about farming, I know that food security is national security. Agriculture is the #1 industry in New York State, and yet our prime farmland is being lost to poorly planned development at a frightening pace. And these land trusts that are here this morning, they're careful stewards of the funding that they receive, permanently protecting farms, wildlife habitat, and natural places for future generations. Land, they don't make it anymore. I watched sprawling development take over my own childhood town within a span of a couple decades. And that development pressure is now threatening and taking over prime farmland surrounding my own farm. New York's soils are among the most fertile in the country and the world, and paving it all over just does not make sense. We really have to be proactive if we're going to feed our growing population, not push viable farms out of business and farming to marginal lands. Funding from these New York State programs allowed the town of Parma to create a farmland preservation plan. Once that plan was in place, the town was able to apply for grants for farm preservation, and we quickly moved forward with 2 landowners eager to permanently protect their farms. So together with Genesee Land Trust, those 2 farms totaling over 200 acres have been preserved to date, both within a mile of my own. In 2016, our neighbor, John Adams, who was a retired dairy farmer, approached my son, asking if he would be interested in leasing his 200 acres on a 5-year lease through another state program called the Transition Incentive Program, which Commissioner Bell mentioned. That transition incentive program helps young farmers obtain land from retiring farmers. And so Rich, at age 21, signed on. And having that additional land has really helped our operation to be more profitable. So about 2 years ago, I started talking with John about his land, and I asked if he'd be interested in jointly applying to put his farm and ours into a conservation easement. His children did not have an interest in farming, and he shared that he always hoped we would one day be able to buy his farm. So in November of 2019, John and Margaret Adams, together with Rich and myself, we contacted Lorna and Liz from the Genesee Land Trust. So with their knowledge and support, our application has now been filed with the New York State Department of Ag and Markets. If our conservation easement is approved, we plan to use the money from the sale of our own land's development rights to put toward the purchase of the Adams farm. Our operation will be more sustainable.
No.
Something happened there and I got muted. I'm sorry. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not sure where I cut out there. I just got new internet in my house the other day and something might have happened. So if our conservation easement gets approved, we plan to use that money from the sale of our own land's development rights to put towards purchasing the Adams farm. Our operation will be more sustainable and 300 more acres of prime land will be permanently protected. And my young farmer son can afford the land he needs to continue farming. So our joint project is just a perfect example of what Commissioner Ball was talking about, how these state programs work to keep farms from being lost in intergenerational transfer. As was mentioned, 1/3 of New York farms are owned by farmers over age 65, and they're at really high risk of being lost to development when there's not a younger family member to take over. Funding for these programs is truly an investment in the future. And on behalf of myself, all farmers, land trusts, and everyone who works to protect the land, we thank our New York State legislators for your continued support, and we look forward to meeting with you later today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. A really wonderful example of, as you said, how Farmland Protection can help facilitate intergenerational transition and keep land in farming. Yes, claps, definitely claps around. Great job. And I also want to recognize the Assembly members and legislator and senators that are on with us. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to our presentation about farmland protection and our next generation of farmers today. So Marilyn gave us the perfect segue to talk a little bit more about our next generation of farmers. Let's get back to that trivia. Now on number 8 and number 9 on your screen, what percentage of farmers in New York are over 65? And how many acres do they own or operate that will be transitioning to a new generation in the coming years? I'll give you a moment to write that down. And here's the answer. Nearly 1/3, or 29% of our farmers in New York are over 65 as of the last census. And these senior farmers own or operate 1.7 million acres of land vulnerable to being lost as it changes hands. At the same time, young, new, and BIPOC farmers face tremendous challenges finding affordable land to get started in farming in New York State. In fact, in the last census, we learned that BIPOC farmers represent less than 2% of farmers in New York. Now, returning to farmer age for a moment, for question number 10, what is the average ratio in New York of farmers over 65 to farmers under 35? On average, there are 4 farmers over 65 for every 1 farmer under 35 in New York State. But in some counties, the outlook is even worse. Now, looking at this map, the counties colored in yellow, orange, and red are where there are at least double the number of senior farmers to young farmers working within that county. The ratio is unfortunately highest in Broome, Saratoga, Sullivan, Onondaga, and Greene counties. Now, remember, Broome County is also where we saw the most farmland conversion between 2001 and 2016. So without our intervention, this does not bode well for areas with high numbers of senior farmers and low numbers of young farmers who are ready to take over the farm. This is dire. And to continue to have a thriving farm and food sector to feed New Yorkers in the future, we must work to bring a diverse new generation of farmers onto the land during this period of intergenerational transition.
One of the major issues that we need to work to overcome in order to bring a new generation onto the land is that farmland is really expensive in New York. Returning briefly to Farmland Protection, as promised, this program plays an important role in making farmland more affordable. Protecting farmland can help senior farmers capitalize on the equity that they've built up in their land over time, instead of feeling like they have no choice but to sell their land to developers in order to afford retirement. On the other side, restricting the ability to develop the land lowers its market value and makes that land more affordable and therefore financially accessible for new farmers. Farmland Protection works hand in hand with the state-funded Farmland for a New Generation New York program to bring a diverse new generation of farmers onto the land in New York State. Launched in October of 2018, Farmland for a New Generation New York is a partnership between American Farmland Trust, the Department of Agriculture and Markets, Land Trust, Cornell Cooperative Extension Offices, and other nonprofits working together to help new, beginning, and underserved farmers find land across the state, and to help senior farmers and non-operating landowners make their land available to farmers. So state funding supports two components that work hand in hand to make this program successful. The first is the Resource Center, a centralized one-stop shop for farmers and landowners that includes a farmland and job finder website, and first point of contact with American Farmland Trust expert staff who provide guidance and advice to farmers and landowners on their next steps. There's also a statewide network of regional navigator organizations funded through Farmland for a New Generation grants who work one-on-one with farmers and landowners in their area to help them find land or find a farmer. Your next trivia question: how many regional navigators worked across New York to bring a new generation of farmers onto the land in 2020? The answer is 27. You can see the full list of organizations in their logos on the left, and the map here on the right shows where regional navigators are working across New York State. The darker blue color indicates that there are more regional navigators working with farmers and landowners in these counties. If you remember our earlier maps, you'll notice overlap between where regional navigators are working and areas where there are high ratios of senior to young farmers or where we've lost a lot of farmland.
All right, for your final two trivia questions, within just 2 years of operation, how many farmers have received one-on-one support from AFT and regional navigators to find land or find a farmer through Farmland for a New Generation? And how many farmers have found land? Amazingly, I am so pleased to report that over 5,200 farmers have received one-on-one support through this program, leading to 68 matches of farmers to 2,613 acres of land in New York State. And on this map, you can see where those matches have been made throughout New York. Now, given average farm sales per acre, this means through these matches, we've retained or gained at least $2 million in farm revenue with just $800,000 in state funding over 2 years. We've accomplished so much together, but there is so much left to do to transition millions of acres to a new generation. This year, we will be asking the legislature and the governor to continue to fund Farmland for a New Generation New York at $400,000 in this year's state budget to keep this momentum going and bring more farmers onto the land. Now, before we move on to our video, I'd like to invite Assemblywoman Carrie Woerner to say a couple of words. She has been an incredible champion for this program. Assemblywoman?
Thank you so much, Sam. It is a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you, Michaela, for your great work as well. I am just so impressed with the accomplishments that Farmland for a New Generation has had over 2 years. It took us a couple of years to get this program funded, and your vision and your persistence was terrific. And so it is a pleasure to see the program that we championed together 4 years ago be so successful now. You know, I live in Saratoga County and I represent Saratoga and Washington counties where we have a lot of that nationally significant land. And we also have high ratios of older farmers. On top of that, Saratoga County, which is the fastest growing county in upstate New York, has tons of development pressures, as Marilyn talked about with her community, not in Saratoga County, but it's a problem that's across the state. And so when I see the Farmland Preservation and Conservation programs working so well in Saratoga and Washington counties, I know that there's hope for the future, because as all of you say, where there's no farms, there's no food. And in this year, we have certainly seen how important it is to strengthen our food supply chain, to support our farmers who have done so much for so many in this pandemic. So it's a pleasure to be here with you. Best of luck on your advocacy day, and certainly I will, with my Assembly colleagues, be championing the restoration of these monies next year as well. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Really appreciate you being with us and all of your championship and support. So this concludes our trivia portion of the day. So please take a moment to tally your scores. And if you were in the ballpark, give yourself the point. And remember that on number 5, you get a point for each correct answer, 1 through 10, and then bonus if you get more than 5. And once you have your score, please put it into the chat and we will announce the winner before the end of our morning program. While you tally, let's watch a little video that we made with many of you back in the fall about Farmland for a New Generation.
As chair of the Legislative Commission on Rural Resources, I know how important our family farmers are to the economy and culture of New York State. But 30% of New York's farmers, who farm almost 2 million acres of land, are nearing retirement or well past the usual retirement age. Many are waiting for younger farmers to come along and care for the land they love.
The average age of farmers is increasing, and so we know how critically important it is to support our new and young farmers. It's this next generation who will keep agricultural lands in production, preserve open space, and ensure the future of our industry in our state.
Hi, my name is Tim Bellow. I'm the owner and operator of Featherbed Lane Farm, which is a 60-acre farm property just outside of Saratoga Springs in Saratoga County. In addition to my work as a farmer, I am the project manager with American Farmland Trust in our New York State office, which is located in Saratoga Springs, and I work with farmers and farmland owners around the state. And the umbrella kind of project under which I work is the Farmland for New Generation New York program. And that's a program wherein we offer a farm linking website, the New York Farmland Finder. And that's a place for a farmer who might be seeking land to post, say, the type of farm that they're looking for, the acreage and the location, the type of business they're looking to develop, and the type of tenure arrangement they would like to create, the infrastructure they might need, and other details like that. It's also a place for a farmland owner to be able to list the type of farm property they're making available and how they're doing that and what it entails. And then there's this network that's a part of the Farmland for New Generation New York program of regional navigators. These are organizations that we very closely partner with, Cornell Cooperative Extension offices, land trusts, and other agricultural service providers who are available to work one-on-one with farmers seeking land, farmland owners maybe looking to conserve their farms or looking to make their land available to a farmer.
Hi. My name is John Brown, and I'm the director of the legal clinic at Pace Law School in White Plains, New York, that provides legal support to small farms and food businesses. Now, I'm thrilled that for the last 2 years, our program has been a part of the Farmland for New Generation New York network. This has supported us in the work that we're doing to give pro bono legal assistance to farmers in finding land, whether it's helping people with leases or helping to create secure land ownership opportunities for farmers or providing legal trainings on these topics. And there's so many great people throughout the state doing really important work in this area in different regions in different ways. And I think it's amazing what this program has done to bring them all together and create one strong coordinated response and support system for farmland access in New York.
This area requires a great amount of expertise and knowledge, and because I can tap into this network of people with all the diverse amounts of diverse types of information that people need to know, I have a much greater likelihood of actually being able to support this transition and help these landowners and land seekers keep farming viable.
Farmland for a New Generation New York is important. Here in Washington County, more than half the farmers are older than 55 or approaching retirement age. So we need to provide opportunities to bring new farmers in and keep our agricultural work strong. Also, the program has allowed us to provide opportunities to bring new farmers to our area, see what farmland is available, and just see what the county has to offer.
Aspiring farmer born and raised in the city, I didn't really know where to look in my search for land. I had a few requirements that I wanted the land to fulfill. I wanted forested land, I wanted the opportunity to make maple syrup, I wanted pasture, I wanted a few boxes ticked, and Farmland Finder really helped me make those dreams reality. I wouldn't have been able to find this particular piece of land without it.
Farmland for a New Generation New York has allowed me to support non-farming landowners by helping them to assess the best agricultural use for their property and to connect with new farmers looking for farmland.
One of the most challenging part in finding farmer was to really understand who they are. American Farmland Trust was really instrumental in our search process for the farmland, as instrumental in finding the farmers. And they have been really helpful during the process, and I can't thank them enough.
In January, I met a landowner by viewing their profile, and they saw mine as well. We got to know each other, realized we had similar goals in mind. It's a few months later now, but we're actually to the point where we're putting the final touches on a lease, a long-term lease. And with a little bit of luck, next year I'll be embarking on a new farming enterprise focusing on small grains and livestock. It's been a long but fruitful process.
Farmers, new and established, are so important to our community. They feed our families, and we're so excited that we can be part of a program that supports farming into the future and trying to get farmers on land that's available for farming.
Hi, my name is Brian Akama with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Broome County. One thing that we all have in common is that we all need to eat. One thing that's never being made is we're never making new land. The land that we have, we need to preserve and make it the best and the most available as we possibly can, and bringing that to the next generation of farms.
As a farm owner, the desire to keep land in agriculture is ingrained in me. I look for successor farmers to share that value and a commitment to support their community with healthy food and healthy farming practices. My successor has used our very accessible and talented regional navigator and received smart guidance.
Here in Western New York, many of our farmers are starting to think about retiring. But the future of their farm isn't always certain. Many of them are still looking for the next generation of farmers to come in and carry on their legacy. Thanks to Farmland for a New Generation New York, we're able to help these farmers connect with new operators and people who are looking for a place to continue or start their life's work.
We must do all we can to bring a new generation of farmers into the industry. That's why I'm proud to support Farmland for a New Generation New York.
Congratulations to the 50 farmers who have connected to farm properties through this program.
Finally, I want to wish a happy birthday to the Farmland for a New Generation. Thank you for everything that you do here in New York State and in our county.
It's Kathleen, a regional navigator in Western New York, where the berries are sweet, the veggies are big, the corn is tall, and the milk tastes the best. Happy birthday, Farmland for a New Generation.
I just want to say happy anniversary to American Farmland Trust, Farmland for a New Generation. It has been an amazing year. You have built a network of great resources across the state, and as a result of that, you're up to 50 matches already. Congratulations, best wishes for future success. We're all counting on you. Thanks so much.
Congratulations on connecting over 50 farmers with land
and to put landowners in touch with new farmers. So happy birthday. Happy birthday to Farmland for a New Generation. And remember, no farms, no food.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Bellow, project manager for American Farmland Trust here in New York, also a farmer, own and operate a farm in Saratoga County. And I am very excited this morning to introduce a couple of farmers to you to share some of their stories. First is Sam Rose at Sunrider Farm. I got to meet Sam in fall of 2018 when he participated in a Finding Farmland class that American Farmland Trust and other partnering organizations hosted in the Hudson Valley as well as in Western New York. And Sam was at that time managing a diversified vegetable and livestock operation in the Hudson Valley, had been doing that for around 5 years, a little over 5 years. And he was also beginning to look for a farm property for his own business. Over the next couple of years, he and I emailed regularly, scheduled or had impromptu phone calls to discuss and evaluate possible properties, to think about lease development, conservation easements, strategies for finding funding, and how to try and find the right farm. And I should note that a great many other organizations, other regional navigators and other partner groups have been closely connected and working with Sam in that process. And the great news is that Sam's hard work is bearing fruit, and fingers crossed, he's very near to finalizing a lease that'll help him develop this a community farm as well as a grain operation in the Hudson Valley. I'd like to turn it over to Sam now so he can give us any updates and share with us his experiences with finding and securing access to land here in New York.
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for this opportunity to speak with you. We're all aware of how urgent an issue food security is, and in addition, it creates jobs and drives local economies directly and indirectly. And of course, it also offers the added value aspects of open spaces within communities. A little bit about myself, I studied plant science at Cornell and later taught high school science and got my master's through the New York City Teaching Fellows. I lived in Mexico for around 10 years, first teaching field science, and then co-founding and directing a nonprofit called Raíz de Fondo. That to this day still runs several urban farms and provides gardening and nutritional education to a spectrum of community members. And I came to the Hudson Valley to manage another nonprofit, Sky High Farm, that donates livestock and produce to those in need. I'm now pivoting to a new farm enterprise on 200 leased acres of prime farmland that I found with the help of Farmland Trust. The focus will be organic, regeneratively farmed, artisanal small grains. Simultaneously, the owners and I are collaborating to create a 5-acre community farm with parcels that community members can adopt and common fields worked by volunteers exclusively for donation to local pantries and soup kitchens. We will offer educational opportunities, workshops, and other events to foster food security, social cohesion, outdoor recreation, and land stewardship. Regarding the grain enterprise, I've created a business model suitable to this unique region within the spheres of New York City and the capital. I can't compete with the Midwest on volume, but I believe I can compete on quality and regional varieties marketed in part directly to consumers. I believe that the community garden, on one hand, will add value by bringing a stream of traffic through. And I also hope to have a solid contingent of local consumers who are home or hobby bakers. And then in addition, the Hudson Valley has seen a surge of tourism from the metropolitan area, and I hope to attract those customers as well. So while I'll be selling to wholesale, local mills and bakeries, my business plan relies heavily on direct-to-consumer sales locally. And in addition, I've earmarked 5% of my enterprise production that will go also to local food security. The two projects, the community farm and the farm enterprise, mutually benefit each other, even though one is for profit and one is nonprofit. And it's regarding Farmland Trust, it's funny, but as the saying goes, it looks like I finally found happiness in my own backyard. I'd been searching for land for about 5 years to no avail, especially with current land prices. I was first introduced, as Tim mentioned, to American Farmland Trust at a workshop that took place at the Hudson Valley Farm Hub. Subsequently, I created a profile for myself with my aspirations on their FarmLink website. The platform introduced me to several different land opportunities over the years, and a few landowners even reached out to me directly. And then finally last year, I came across the property I will be leasing, which is literally 15 minutes from my home walking and adjacent to my kids' elementary school. I literally never would have met the owners without FarmLink. I simply can't imagine a set of circumstances where we might have accidentally exchanged our contact info. And the truth is that I was actually surprised to find such a large parcel of land in my town. But thanks to a previously negotiated conservation easement with the Dutchess Land Conservancy, this parcel will be preserved from development now and into the future. Throughout the process of contacting the owners, negotiating lease terms, and putting together a viable farm enterprise plan, navigators from Farmland Trust were there to offer consulting and bounce ideas off of. They also put me in contact with the New York State Agricultural Mediation Program, NYSAMP, who helped facilitate lease conversations with the landowners, the Columbia Land Conservancy, who helped come up with some of the mechanisms to handle certain issues within the lease and create detailed maps for the lease agreement, the Pace Food and Beverage Law Clinic, who is doing a pro bono review of our lease draft, and the Hudson Valley Agribusiness Development Corporation, who has helped me by subsidizing agribusiness consultation and technical help. And again, navigators from Farmland Trust put me in contact with those folks. So this continued assistance has been invaluable. It's becoming more and more difficult to find suitable farmland in my region. I believe, however, that local farms are essential to a healthy economy and resilient society. And I reflect on my own challenges in finding suitable farmland. And I know that there are many who face even greater barriers than myself. So I sincerely hope that you approve the funding being requested to continue providing these services. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sam, and best of luck on this next adventure. I look forward to keeping in touch with you about it. I'd now like to introduce Christine and Fabio Ritmo of Nibble Roots Farm. Christine and Fabio began searching for land and were searching for a few years. And they did find a great farm after a few years that was listed on the Farmland Finder website, operated by American Farmland Trust and partnering organizations. But as it turns out, the connection they made with the farmland owners was even more special enough that when those owners made preparations to move to a new property, they invited Christine and Fabio to join them and even included their interest in the search for that property. I'm very happy to say that they are now landed in the town of Catskill and are very busy preparing for the upcoming growing season. In spite of snows and all that the season may throw at them, it's no small feat to relocate a farm and start a farm business. It's really exciting that they've been successful in making this transition to a new property. And now let's hear a little bit more about it and their experiences.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you everyone for asking us to join you today. We're very excited to have the opportunity to share our story. We're speaking to you from a greenhouse, which is currently cold and empty, but will soon be hopefully bursting with seedlings.
So we are both Capital Region natives, first generation farmers, husband, wife couple. We went to school out in Western New York. I studied Native American history, and Christine studied equine business management and biology. As Tim mentioned, we are in Catskill, just 10 minutes outside of town in Greene County. And we grow certified naturally grown vegetables, herbs, and flowers. And we're planning on marketing through a CSA and by selling to local restaurants. The property is a mix of pasture and forest. It's 141 acres. It's bordered by the Catterskill Creek and is bisected by 87. We have the longest cave in Greene County, Jack Packer's Cave. And our property was historically a dairy farm. The last farmer raised livestock and beef cattle, but there's not been any farming done on the property in the previous 5 years. The farm buildings are in good shape, but they need to be revitalized. And our goal is to renovate the farm buildings to operate as a vegetable production farm and a space for artistic residencies. We're currently renovating the old milking parlor into our vegetable washing pack station, and we hope to, in the future, have a commercial kitchen in there and our farm store.
So I'll just share a little bit about our story and our journey to get to where we are today. At the risk of sounding cliche, we would literally not be where we are without the New York Farmland Finder and the resources that are provided through it. It's what we tell everyone, it's the dating app for land seekers and land finders or land owners. We posted a profile on the Hudson Valley Farmland Finder back in 2015. Like many, we took sort of a very winding path to get to farming. As Fabio mentioned, we studied very different things in college. But in 2015, we quit our jobs and we moved to Washington County and interned at a vegetable production farm up there. And that is the first year we posted our profile on American Farmland Trust, Farmland Finder resources. After many years of visiting several different potential properties in New York and in Vermont, actually, we, for a variety of reasons, just nothing really felt right, whether it was the location or the tenure arrangement that we were looking for. But in 2018, we were completing a farmer training program in Vermont. And we again turned to the Farmland Finder, and we met our current partners, Cecilia and Gabe, who had a farm in Saratoga County. They're a professional couple, and they were looking for farmers to partner with and bring their land back into production. So we spent the winter developing a lease arrangement with them and began working together in the spring of 2019. Progressing through our growing season, again, we were doing small scale vegetable production, some flowers and herbs, and selling to some local Saratoga County farmers markets. We started very small, but as we got to know Cecilia and Gabe better, we realized how aligned we were via our ethics and values and visions for the future of what the farm could be. As year one was coming to a close and we were looking ahead, planning for year two, we were going to expand, get into some larger markets, triple our production. Our partners let us know that for a variety of reasons, they were relocating to the Hudson Valley, and they asked us to come with them. So we had a pretty difficult decision to make quickly. We had begun to establish ourselves in the Saratoga community. We put a lot of sweat equity into the land in Saratoga, but ultimately the right path was clear for us. We knew we had a unicorn of an opportunity, and we decided to move ourselves and our farm to the Hudson Valley to pursue and grow our partnership with Cecilia and Gabe. Our partners included us in the search process, as Tim mentioned, which is a pretty incredible opportunity. We had a lot of say in the land that we were looking for, and the location was important to us. And again, we turned to Farmland Finder. We had a profile listed, and our current farm was actually listed on the Farmland for a New Generation site in Hudson Valley Farmland Finder. We looked at several properties together before essentially settling on this one. And in the midst of all this, COVID hit. We were selling Saratoga County property, purchasing and moving to the Greene County property, dealing with the COVID pandemic. We decided to take the 2020 growing season off while we were transitioning our farm. So we have been in Catskill now since July of 2020. We are simultaneously working off-farm jobs, and as Tim mentioned, we are very busy renovating barns, prepping for our sort of second year one. So we're sort of starting over in 2021 in our new county and our new community.
So our long-term goals here are to share and extend the incredible opportunity that Gabe and Cecilia have given us with other young farmers. We hope to have space on our farm someday for beginning farmers to start a business or collaborate with us. We believe agriculture is a vehicle for social change, and this farm is the center of that project. We realize that creating this vision is not something we can do alone, or that we even want to do alone, and we recognize through the power of collaboration in agriculture with Gabe, Cecilia, our farmer friends, National Young Farmers, and the resources through the Farmland Finder and other organizations, we hope to have an impact beyond our farm.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Christine and Fabio and Sam, for joining us. Such inspiring stories. I always love hearing from young farmers who are making it happen. So, you know, I think that this gives us a really good overall picture. I'll just quickly summarize that we need both farmland and farmers in New York State to feed us and keep our economy strong. And our coalition is going to be working throughout the day and the next few months to build support for these programs that keep land and farming and bring a new generation of farmers onto the land. And these are specifically the things that we will be asking our state legislators and the governor to support. But Without further ado, since I know we're running slightly behind, hopefully folks can stay for another few minutes. I'd like to ask our champions in the legislature to talk about these programs and why they support them. And so I'll begin by asking Senator Michelle Hinchey, our new chair of the Senate Agriculture Committee, to come off of mute. Thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations on your election and your appointment to this new position. We've seen you really hit the ground running with an agenda that centers supporting our next generation of farmers. So can you speak to the group for a minute about why this is a priority for you and why you think it's important to help farmers keep their land and farming in New York State?
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you so much for having me here today and for the great work that American Farmland Trust and this coalition does. New York is an ag state, and our agricultural sector is a core part of our upstate economies. As the new state senator for the 46th district, I represent 5 counties that are squarely in the center of this conversation that we're having today, including Greene County, which, as you mentioned, is one of the most vulnerable places to losing farmland without adequate transition plans. Although Christine and Fabio, let's talk. I'm excited about hearing from you guys. We have to prioritize our agricultural sector, and COVID-19 has really laid bare just how important that is for all of us. To better capture the breadth of this issue area and to connect the dots for everyone in our conference, we've informally renamed our committee the Agriculture and Food Committee, as I know has been done as well in the Assembly. Beyond supporting our small farms and new farmers, a big priority point is to get healthy, New York grown and produced food into the hands of all residents. During this pandemic, we've seen an increased demand for local foods, and we want to capitalize on the new connections that have been forged between our local farms and regional markets like food banks. We've seen just how important strengthening statewide supply chains are and to providing locally sourced fresh food to communities in otherwise food desert areas. To ensure the continued success of agriculture in our state, we have to keep farmland in the hands of farmers and to build the connections between current and future generations. The funding and programs run by Farmland for a New Generation are critical to the success of agriculture across New York State. Connecting open land to new farmers, helping to keep farmland green, and building educational resources for beginning farmers with an important focus on increasing diversity and access to land for BIPOC farmers is really just how we need to move forward. Agriculture, as we know it, has a pivotal role to play in also fighting climate change. And we can strengthen those ties by making our next generation of farmers fluent in best practices for soil health, land management, and carbon sequestration. Farming and agricultural work in general are critical to the success of our state, and we need to treat it as such. We have to make sure that everybody across our state recognizes just how pivotal a role our agriculture community plays in not just access to locally sourced food, but to our economy at large, and how well we play into the national conversation that has been so well articulated on this call today. So thank you for your advocacy on all of these critical issues. I am really excited to work with all of you in this upcoming legislative session to promote a vibrant and sustainable agricultural economy here in New York. We don't survive without you.
Thank you so much, Senator. Very inspiring, very well said. Appreciate it. And thank you for being an advocate for these programs. So now I'd like to invite Assemblywoman Lupardo, the chair of the Agriculture Committee in the Assembly, Agriculture and Food Committee in the Assembly, to come off of mute. Assemblywoman, you have fought hard for state programs that support our farmers. And you represent the city of Binghamton and the surrounding areas in Broome County, where we learned today that there's high land conversion and a large number of senior farmers outnumbering young farmers. We also know that you've been a champion for these programs. So can you take a moment to speak to the group about why that is and what you see as the priorities for agriculture and for food in New York this year?
Okay.
I can hear you.
Can you see me?
Yes, yes,
oh.
Now I can, yes. Thank you.
I can't see myself though. Hang on a minute. Can I get a share screen or a?
Maybe Ashley can help you out, but we can see you and we can hear you.
Well,
you look great.
Well, thanks for having us. I certainly, I don't want to repeat everything that my new colleague in the Senate just said. She's terrific. Really a pleasure to work with. And I think we're going to be able to certainly accomplish a lot in our agriculture and food committee. We're calling that informally, although I think we've requested to do that officially. We'll see what happens. I'd like to thank American Farmland Trust for your advocacy and for all the hard work. You're probably one of the hardest working groups in terms of getting out in front of the budget, letting us know what your concerns are, being crystal clear on your statistics, and really making a very, very strong case on behalf of all these programs. Certainly I take to heart your adage of, no farms, no food, but honestly, no farmers, no farms. I want to take it that one step farther. I don't need to convince you. You've convinced me. And I think your quiz today are really the major selling points. But, to be honest, the presentation from Marilyn, I think summed it up. And if I'm out there and I'm talking to people and talking to legislators, I really truly believe the most compelling point that she made was that food security is indeed national security. And when people understand the risk that we're facing in terms of loss of farmland, look what's happening in my own county, in Broome County. I think that's largely from solar development, to be honest. But when we look at it from that point of view, and when she said land, they don't make it anymore. I mean, it's been said quite a bit. It really gets people's attention. And also the fact that we have some of the most fertile land in the world is underappreciated and undervalued by a lot of people. I think it makes a very, very strong argument. And so we're right now in the middle of budget. I understand the importance, I think we all do, of restoring funding to both programs. I think you want to convert them into one, the Navigator program, the centers. Also, to restore funding to the EPF. One piece of good news on the Assembly side is the Speaker has created a COVID economic recovery work group and included agriculture, which is very, very exciting to be part of that group. And I can assure you that this entire set of issues will be included in that, because we're not going to have an economic recovery if we leave land behind. So I promise you that this will be front and center in our conversations as we develop reasonable policies for land use regarding solar, as we try to make sure that our farm to school program that you're such strong advocates for is protected, and that we make sure that we keep all of these issues central to not only farming community, but to New York's economic strength and overall recovery during this COVID time. So thanks so much for what you do.
Right back at you, Assemblywoman. You're such a strong advocate for our farmers and for connecting the dots, and really appreciate that. Appreciate your words today. Thank you for joining us. So now I'd like to invite Senator Rachel May to come off mute. Senator, you're the chair of the Legislative Commission on Rural Resources, and you also represent an area of the state with some of the richest farmland and some of the greatest development pressure, as well as some of the highest local food sales. So can you take a minute or two to share with attendees today why you think it's important for the state to prioritize funding for farmland protection and Farmland for a New Generation New York, and talk about some of the other programs that you think are critical to keep land and farming and keep farmers on the land in New York?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sam, and thank you once again for a fabulous presentation and the chance to meet some of these amazing farmers. So I represent both the city of Syracuse and very rural Madison County, and I live in the exact geographical center of the state, and sadly, as Sam said, a center of farmland loss. As chair of the Rural Resources Commission, I've focused on some of the issues that link our cities and our rural areas, such as connecting farms to institutions like schools, colleges, and hospitals, and protecting our freshwater resources and addressing global warming. And I think farmland protection hits on all of these points. It's really important for our cities to have the farmland out there, both not just because it provides food, but because it is protecting the land that we need for fresh, clean air and clean water, and recreation, honestly. So I also want to say, in light of the troubles that our country has faced, especially in the past year, I am really focused on bridging the divides in our society, and the urban-rural divide is one. I think, you know, every day I think about how we have common interests, common solutions that we can come to if we just cross those divides. I wanted to bring up one trivia statistic that wasn't in the presentation, but it was in the New York Times a couple days ago about if people know how many Black-run farms there were in the United States in 1920 compared to now. And the answer is there were 925,000 Black-run farms in 1920 and only 35,000 in 2017. So I know Farmland Protection is also about diversifying the farmers that we have in this state, and we had a great presentation from some Black farmers about the really innovative agricultural practices they've had, the historical impact they've had on farming in America. They invented CSAs, for example. And since Central New York is a key place where refugees come when they come to America, and they come with a whole suite of food choices that are not typical of this area, that developing those farms and helping people start their farms and grow the food that they want to eat and then connect back to the cities is a really important thing. So those are some of the things I'm focused on. I love Farmland for a New Generation and Farmland Protection programs, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, Senator, and thank you for uplifting that. Really appreciate you all being here, and everybody who's joined us this morning. And if you could, if the two of you, and if Donna, if you're still here, if you could, just for some final words, if you have any tips or advice for those that are here who are going to be doing meetings with your colleagues today. Any final last words of advice for us before we all meet with our teams and start meeting with your colleagues on how we can help garner their support for these programs?
Go ahead, Michelle.
You were unmuted before me, so please.
Well, I would say the same thing when it comes to these lobby calls. I think advocacy visits. I think it's extremely important to tell your story. It's so compelling when people can really understand the critical importance of the work that you're doing, not only on behalf of American Farmland Trust, but on behalf of the state, on behalf of our food security. Also, I think it was mentioned by the commissioner, the silver lining of COVID is certainly a deeper appreciation from where food comes from, and for the workers who produce it and process it and get it from farm to table. So I think stories are very important, but I also think these statistics are hugely valuable, especially the issue of land conversion. I don't think people really understand what's at risk here, with a strip mall here or another project there. When they can really see it from their own county's perspective, the more you can make it real, I think the better we're going to be in terms of getting more people strongly advocating for agriculture. So thanks.
I echo all of that. It's exactly right. You know, I think for us, what we see too is a lot of our colleagues, you know, who don't grow up in communities like ours, who don't grow up around agriculture, they just don't understand. They don't connect the dots. We live in a fast food society. And so it's easy for them to not realize how critical our farmland is, and quite frankly, the issues that many of our farmers and our agricultural workers are facing. And they just don't hear it because it's not where they are. And so being able to communicate that, talking about farming and agriculture really as a business too, and what that means for the economy of our state, and what that means supporting our local family farms, how that not only helps our economy across the state, upstate, but across the state, but how it really strengthens best farming practices. You know, I think a lot of unfortunately, a lot of our colleagues, when they think about farming, they think about the Netflix documentaries that they see. They don't understand really the type of work that's being done across our state. And we have to educate them on that. We have to let them know that the more we support and strengthen our small, medium-sized family farms across this state, we're best promoting climate initiatives. We're best promoting locally sourced food that everyone deserves to eat. And we should be strengthening that across our state. So the education piece, for a lot of people, they just don't realize it, but they need to be heard. And once you hear the stories, even the stories on this call, but once you hear not just the incredible things that our farmers are doing and innovating, but also the hardships, right? Understanding the perspective of what people are going through and what the market looks like currently, talking about food stamps and Medicaid and the cost of farm equipment. These are things that people just don't know unless they have these conversations.
Well,
and I'll add to that. I'll just say to that, when I have those conversations with my colleagues, they're very receptive. So it's a great thing. It's a great conversation to have.
Thank you. And Senator May, any final advice to add?
Well, just from my perspective, as I said, representing a city as well as farmland, cities are often downstream from our farms. They are at the ends of rivers and streams, and they collect all of the pollution that comes down those streams. Family farms are out there protecting our land, protecting our watersheds, and making much more of a difference than if the land were developed or if it were, even big agriculture necessarily. So this is a really, environmental justice for cities too, if we can get more farmland protected.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you all so much for being here with us, for joining us for the presentation, and then for sharing your wisdom and insight with us. Really appreciate it. And thank you so much for being our champions. So this concludes our program this morning. But before we conclude, let me congratulate Renee Bouplon from Agricultural Stewardship Association for being our trivia winner. Well done, Renee. And hopefully you all, perhaps learned something, and thank you for joining us. I wish that I could be with you all in person, but it feels like we really created a sort of feeling in the room today. So hopefully everybody else felt that too. So everybody who is not continuing on for a lobby day, thank you again so much for being with us, and you can move off to the rest of your day now, and we'll speak to some of you later on.